Welcome to this month's Align Coach webinar. As we always do, we're going to give everybody a few minutes to join us. And if you would like to, using the chat, let us know where you are in the world this morning, this afternoon, this evening. We always love to see how far and wide this content is going. So please don't hesitate to let us know where you're joining us from. Like I said, we're going to give everybody a few minutes. I see Carol is on this call, so that's far into Europe. From Monterrey, Mexico, good morning. Hope things are going well in Mexico. We are here in New Orleans, Louisiana. Steve, where are you again? Remind me.
I am in Springfield, Missouri, the heart of the Ozarks.
Fantastic. Hope everyone has had a good start to their week. Thank you for taking time out of your day this morning or this afternoon to join us. And we hope this webinar will provide you some great content and information about the great game of business. Like I said, we're going to give everybody just a few minutes. We'll probably start at about 2 or 3 minutes past the hour. So if you'll just sit tight, we'll give everybody an opportunity to join and we'll get going. If there is anyone who is intimately familiar with the great game of business already, please let us know in the chat. Just wondering if there are those who this might be a new subject that they're here to learn about, or whether it might be something that they've either read the book in the past or have some familiarity with already. That would be very helpful to Steve, I'm sure, as well.
Absolutely.
Hopefully everybody has read the book. It is a fundamental sort of business book that has existed for, I guess, what, nearly 2 decades now?
Well, actually, almost 3.
Oh, wow.
So I have with me the 20th anniversary edition. We were just talking the other day about, well, next year is the 30th anniversary. Should we bring out another? Kind of crazy how fast time flies, right?
That's right. So, all right, we're at about 2 minutes past the hour. There will be, I'm sure, more that will join us, but why don't we go ahead and get started? Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. My name is Eugene Turk. I am the Vice President of Business Development at Align, and I want to welcome you to our monthly coach webinar for October 2021. I hope that everyone is doing well, and thank you so much for joining us today. This morning, we are thrilled to have Steve Baker with a presentation on the great game of business, rapid financial results, lasting cultural change. For those of you who may not be familiar with Steve, he is the current vice president of the great game of business. He is an accomplished author, having recently co-authored Get in the Game, which is his own book about the great game of business and mini games, which I'm sure he'll discuss, as well as having authored the update of the #1 bestseller, which he just showed us, The Great Game of Business, the 20th anniversary edition, which of course was originally written by Jack Stack. Steve is a top-rated, highly sought-after speaker and coach on open book management, strategy, execution, leadership, and employee engagement. He has presented to a wide range of audiences from Harvard University to the Department of Defense, and is a regular at Inc. Magazine's 5000 conference. So we are thrilled and honored to have Steve join us here this morning. As always, just one administrative matter. We want this to be as educational and information for all of you as possible. Please feel free to pose questions using the chat feature, and I will monitor that, and we can either interrupt Steve during his presentation, or we can hold those questions to the end of the presentation. We'll have a Q&A in the last 10 or 15 minutes. Again, thank you everybody for attending this Align Coach webinar, and I will now turn the microphone over to Steve.
Well, thank you, Eugene. It's really great to be here. I'm thrilled to be talking with the Align community because we are so well aligned. It is not, I don't think a week goes by that I don't talk to someone who is either an Align subscriber or someone who is practicing some form of, whether it's scaling up or if you talk to the older folks, it's still gazelles and Vern Harnish believers, that sort of thing. What I love about the community is the fact that we are actually looking at the business through the lens of metrics that we can actually track, measure, and report. And those that are really good at it, especially great game companies, are folks who flip the funnel and they say, wow, all these measures show us business success. Let's look at the financial outcomes as well, and let's connect them for our people. And so what I'd like to talk with you about today is this idea of how do you get both the financial results that you want, but also the cultural stickiness, the lasting cultural change that we all want, that will allow us to become the employer of choice and win this war for talent, which is really all about, how do I get people to stay? How do I get them to enjoy what we're doing here and show them we're creating something bigger than just, trying to go for a buck? We're trying to build something special that will last for a long, long time. And so with that, I think a great way to begin the conversation is to start with a really depressing story. That's kind of my style, is to grab you by the heartstrings and hopefully bring you into the conversation. So as Eugene pointed out, I would love it if there's any interaction that you guys want to have, please, throw it into the chat, and he'll help moderate that with me. I did want to say thank you to John Woosley that said his grandfather was a founding associate of SRC, our parent company. Jack, by the way, Jack Stack, the author of the original book and our working CEO today, he's still here, man. I was in a meeting with him yesterday for several hours, and he's just as strategic and forward thinking as he's ever been. It's just so fascinating to be around him. It's a great privilege. I see Aaron, you read the game, and I love that you read Get in the Game and Great Game of Business both. What I'd like to do is hold off on your question about simplifying the bonus plan formula, because we do actually talk about that. So I'll come back to you, Aaron, when we get to the stake in the outcome, as we call it. But thank you for that question, and let's get in there. So right now, Eugene, you should be able to see my screen. Is that correct? Everything's coming through okay?
Yep, looks great.
Awesome. Okay. Well, let's start with that story I promised, right? Anyone who has seen Life of Pi can probably remember that at the time it came out, and even today, it's probably one of the most stunning movies visually that I have ever seen. And what I'd like to say about it is, look, I mean, they deserved it, right? They worked hard at that movie. First of all, Rhythm and Hughes is the company that did the visual effects. By the time they were working on Life of Pi, they had already won an Academy Award for Babe and an Academy Award for The Golden Compass. They were the best in the world at visual effects. They were also not only the best in the world, Oscar winners, right? They were also the envy of the industry. And if you don't believe me, I mean, let's talk about how good they really are. This is a picture of their soundstage for Life of Pi. I mean, nothing is real in this movie but the boy in the boat. Not even the main character, Richard Parker, the tiger, was real. Every hair on that animal's head was artificially created in a computer. And I just think that's so fascinating, because they had to create all new systems, all new software, even hardware that would allow them to create these effects and really change the game when it came to visual effects. And the thing was, the reason they were the envy of the industry and the reason they got the best talent is because they had this incredible culture. They treated the people really well. People were well compensated, but also, it was Hey, you want to wear shorts today? Sure, every day. How about bring your dog to work? Why not every day? How about bean bags and the whole everything you hear about a cool place to work, plus all the other stuff that you want, right? Bagels for breakfast, free lunch when busy production times were happening, dinners, dry cleaning services, babysitting services. I mean, all kinds of things to keep people focused, right? To allow them to focus on the creative work. Well, the incredible part is that when you dig a little deeper, you might say, well, that's all pretty surfacey stuff, Steve. Anyone can do that. Well, what about, going deeper and saying, how do you want to develop yourself and how can we help with that? Even, Cadillac healthcare program, including LASIK eye surgery. These are things that go above and beyond. So they were the best in the world, envy of the industry. And of course, they deserved it. They got their third Academy Award for Best Visual Effects in Life of Pi. And here they are accepting their award. This picture was taken 13 days after they filed Chapter 11 and laid off all 254 employees. Now, what in the world am I talking about? Why would I tell a story like this? Well, the reason is because the point of this story is to say, can you be the best in the world and still lose everything? Well, absolutely you can. And that is our story. So I'm with the Great Game of Business. We are a wholly owned subsidiary of the SRC Holdings Corporation, which started out many years ago as a division of International Harvester. In fact, SRC stood for the Springfield Renew Center, and it was located here in Springfield, Missouri. And their charge was to remanufacture the broken down, dirty diesel engines that failed in the farm fields, the construction sites, and the highways around the country. So if it broke down, it came back to Springfield, Missouri, and it wasn't rebuilt. It was remanufactured, literally torn down to its smallest common denominator and remanufactured to better than new spec. These people were amazing, best in the world at what they did. But there was a problem, right? The problem was if anyone remembers back in the late 70s and early 80s, our economy was in a shambles. I mean, International was struggling with a 6-month strike, 12% inflation, and global competition they just couldn't handle. Not to mention out in the world, there was 17% unemployment, gas lines, an oil embargo, an energy crisis. I mean, we were in trouble. And International was feeling it like all the big companies were. The fact of the matter is they didn't change their behavior. And when you don't change your behavior and you've got the whole world changing around you, you just can't be command and control anymore. Do your job, nothing more, nothing less. Your job should now be to be agile, to be able to pivot, to be able to be innovative. But they kept doing the same things the same way, and it had a huge financial impact on their business. International Harvester was losing $57,000 per hour. Now, those of you who have heard Jack Stack speak, if you've read any of the books, we tell this story a lot because it's really something people, especially young people, need to hear. I mean, 17% unemployment, 12% inflation. These are things that our new generations have no idea what we're talking about. Those were tough times. And when you're losing $57,000 an hour, you've got to cut and cut fast. And the reality was they were cutting fast. They were cutting the big plants. They were shutting down entire towns. They were laying off people at a rate of 1,000 people a week. And they did it for 2 years straight. That is horrible. I mean, it's just incredible to think if you work for International, I mean, think about 100,000 families are impacted by these decisions, right? Well, if you work for International and you were at SRC, the smallest division, and you were in Springfield, Missouri, even though you were the best in the world at what you did, you still saw the axe coming. You could smell a pink slip coming pretty soon, and that was a problem. Well, headquarters was in Melrose Park, Illinois. In fact, Jack Stack, our founder and CEO today, was a young manager at Melrose Park at what you see here, the crawler tractor plant. And he was asked to go to Springfield to shut down the factory. And what he found out was when he got to Springfield, that it was a plant full of people who were ready to go. They were ready to roll up their sleeves, and they would say things like, give me the tools and get the hell out of my way, right? They could do anything. It was amazing. And they won all the awards, right? Best quality, best warranty rate, best on-time delivery, best of the best of the best. Anything that International could throw at them, SRC could handle. The interesting thing was, though, the economic reality was they were going to close or sell the business. Jack could not wrap his head around why someone could be best in the world and still lose their job. Plus, people were coming to him asking godlike questions like, should I get married? Should I take on a mortgage? Should we have a baby? He didn't know the answer. In fact, he had never been given any indication of there was another way out. And so he said, well, gosh, we're really good at this stuff. Why don't we try to make a run at it? He asked International what they wanted for the factory. They said $9 million. He and 12 other managers could only scrape together $100,000 down. So they gathered up their down payment and their certificates of awesomeness, right? All the metrics of manufacturing success they had. But when they went to the banks and laid out their awesomeness, they found out they were looking at the wrong scorecard. They could talk about engineering something down to what Jack calls a gnat's ass, right? 1,000th of an inch tolerance. Wow. But the banks didn't really care about that. They wanted to know, when are you going to pay the money back? And are you a good credit risk? And all those logical questions. The thing is, you see, International had taught Jack the metrics of manufacturing, of running a line, right? And what he didn't know was the metrics and the scoreboards of what makes a great company. Totally different things, right? You can be the best in the world and still lose it all. So what did he do? He didn't give up. He said, okay, what is it that I need? And people would ask stupid questions like, where's your cash flow statement? Where's your business plan? And every time he heard some new term, he would have to go look it up, learn it. And he basically got an MBA by trial and error. He was turned down by 54 financial institutions. There's Jack, by the way. I forgot that I had this in the deck. This is great. This is at what they called second shift, where they would go after work to drink a beer and talk about work. And here's Jack right there. Looks like a young, fresh-faced kid, just getting started. And can you imagine that, being sent somewhere to close down a factory? He just didn't want that, Who wants that either on their resume or their tombstone? Went down to Springfield, shut down a factory. He didn't want that. So he kept learning, kept going back and banging his head on that door, right? Somebody tell me what you need. I'll go find it. And he figured it out one by one. Of those 54 banks that turned him down, he learned one thing. And that was he needed to understand the secret language that was separating the haves and have-nots. And that secret language was the financials. And when he started to learn the financial language of business, he could talk to the bankers differently. Now he could say, oh, you need a different cash flow. Okay, I can start to work on that. Oh, these are the right ratios. These are the wrong ratios. And one of the things he came to realize, of course, as he learned more, was that $8.9 million against $100,000 down is not a good loan. And he said, if I've got a bad loan, I really need a bad bank. So that's what he started to look for. How do I find a bank that will take on incredible risk? 89-to-1 debt to equity. Well, it turns out that's going to be somebody who charges an incredible amount of interest. And so he put on his best suit, his best wingtips, and he went to Oak Brook, Illinois. He said, I hear you're booking bad loans. Have I got a doozy for you? And February 1st, 1983, he booked the worst corporate loan in American history. This buyout was ridiculous. 89-to-1, $8.9 million against $100,000 down at the deal rate of 18%. Well, let me tell you, first of all, the thing that people do in a factory when you go, hey, we got the loan, we saved the jobs, yay, give me the tools and get the hell out of my way, right? Jack's like, no, that's what we did before. We can't do that anymore. We still need all the quality, the warranty rate, best time, on time delivery, all that stuff, but we all need to learn business, because that's what's separating us from truly succeeding and surviving over a long period of time. And so, imagine being 29, 30 years old at this point, 3 kids in diapers, a $200 a month mortgage, and $130,000 of interest expense due. And it was February. In 28 days, holy crap, this is a big deal. And he needed to teach people business. He needed to teach people what he had learned, and he needed to do it in an accelerated fashion, right? Got to do it as quickly as possible, because they couldn't make a $10,000 mistake. They had to make that bank loan payment. And that's where he began. He said, wait a minute, it's not the stuff we make. It's not the services we provide. This is a big takeaway. Write it down. Jack realized that what the bankers were telling him was that the company is the product. Building a great company is exactly what we need to be doing. So in other words, Can you be the best in the world at technical prowess and lose it? Yes, you can. But if you're building a great company, won't you have to have the best warranty rate and best on-time delivery and best customer service? Of course you will. So the thing is, if we focus on what is in our way of building a great company, in this case, debt to equity, right? Making the bank loan payment. Well, by golly, we could put an education program around that, teach people how to make a great company. And then we could put our accountability program around that. Sure. How are we operating against the plan? And finally, what's in it for me if we build a great company? Do I get a piece of the action? And so why not tie your education, accountability, and incentive programs to building a great company? Which seems pretty simple, doesn't it? Well, in order to do so, you're going to have to build a business of business people who think and act and feel like you do as owners of the business. Now, I'm not suggesting that everyone in the room right now go out and implement an ESOP. We happen to be an employee-owned company. We're 100% S Corp ESOP. I'm an owner, and I'm passionate about it. But that isn't the point. We want people who think and act and feel like owners do. And the first thing you got to do is, before you make them owners, why don't you make them business people? So it's not about sharing equity at this point. I just want you to go with me and say, what if you taught people business and appealed to a higher level of thinking? Well, if you do that, if you're trying to build a great company and you're building a business of business people, you really are trying to build a culture of ownership. And I would go further and say a culture of winning, right? Jack realized that he had a couple of problems. Number one is you don't speak the same language right now as your people. I know it. Some of you are going to go, no, but we do it. Good for you. Do they really speak the same language? And are you really looking at the same goals? I just want to challenge you to as you go into your planning season here, one of the things you should be doing is really looking at the whole business so globally, where you can say, do people really understand the goals of the business? Do they feel connected to them? Do they know every day what they can do to move toward those goals and make different actions and decisions? Those behaviors are what are creating numbers in your business right now. It's not really you. I just got to be honest with you, that your people are creating the numbers, good or bad, in your business. And so what we really have to say is that numbers are just stories about people. So let's talk about the language and the goals of the business here. The first thing is, what do employees worry about versus what do owners worry about? And my point with this slide is to show you that what employees want, I want a paycheck, I want a signing bonus, anything you hear today. Beyond that, the research still shows people want job security. Will I get a check? Will it cash? And then can I get more? Right? Can I have more? I want more, and I'm a great employee. So good benefits, time off, being appreciated and recognized, all those good things. Where's that stuff come from? From a growing, profitable, and sustainable business. So if you look at the way we've got them stacked up here, if I can get everybody to be focused on our cash, our revenue, our costs, our materials, anything that you've got that you worry about at night, guess what? If we get everybody concerned about those things, you will have job security. You will be the best in the industry. You will get good benefits and all the other stuff. So thinking like an owner gets what you want as an employee as well. It's kind of fascinating to think about. So just stack them up there and say, what do I need to teach in the coming year? So what's the other problem? If we're not worried about the same things, the same goals, well, we're not speaking the same language, right? And the universal language of business, the language that separates the haves and the have-nots in our world, always has and always will. That secret language is the financials. And they have been around, folks, for a long time. In fact, here's the guy. It's Luca Pacioli. In 1494, this Franciscan friar introduced the world to the income statement and the balance sheet as we know them today. 500 years ago. Are you doing the math? I mean, look, you got to look at it this way. This is the only language that we have that transcends all of our boundaries: culture, language, political, geographical. Everybody uses them. In fact, I was in Houston at an event with 150 companies, and I have done this presentation many times. As you might imagine, this is what I'm passionate about. And I showed this. I said, here's a Chinese balance sheet. Can you read it? And my point is, I can't read it. I know it's Chinese, but I can't read it, but I can tell it balances. So the idea of this universal language is one thing. So at this Houston event, what's funny is someone goes, it is Chinese, it's traditional Chinese, but that balance sheet is from Taiwan. So I'm like going, ha, ha. See, people support what they help create, right? And the point is, he could read it, but we could all understand it. And that's the difference. Can we see that it balances? Absolutely. And look at how happy it made Luca, right? Here's the thing. Jack had to understand a way, had to figure out a way to where he could help people approach business where it didn't seem like an elite sport for the select few, right? Keeping everybody else in the dark and out of the money. He wanted to make it a competitive undertaking, something fun that we could actually learn from and leverage as we go around. So why the great game of business and why that original book? Now, remember, this is in 1983. The book didn't come out till 1992. Jack never believed that this methodology or this idea of using the analogy of a game would ever escape the walls of SRC. It was only the reason that it was only the book that was the reason that it got out into the world. So why did Jack use the analogy? First of all, great technicians, and I don't mean people just turning wrenches, technicians of any kind, and we have worked with, believe me, pilots, surgeons, people writing code for satellites. It doesn't matter what you do. Anything that someone's good at, they're going to be like, let the accountants be the accountants. I didn't go to school for it. I didn't train for it. I haven't worked my life for it. Right? You get the point. So what we got to do is say, it's okay. We're just trying to demystify business. Why can't we make it approachable? Why can't we humanize it, democratize it, use whatever words are your words? The thing is, we've got to just say, you know what? It's okay. You get to be that great technician. But what Jack's point was, is we don't get to be great technicians alone. We have to learn business because that's what's separating us from survival. Now, the second reason is he realized that business has all the same elements that games do. There's a team goal, there are rules in business, there's a scoreboard, the financials, and of course, the reward for winning in the early days was you get to keep your job. Later on, after they turned the business around, within a year or two, they were able to start paying bonuses and start showing career paths and creating other businesses and opportunities for folks. So that it goes way beyond the typical reward system that you might be thinking of. But the idea is we're all in it together. It's not a single person sport. It is a team sport, and we're much more likely to win if we work together. So this is what the game looks like, the methodology behind the great game of business. The principles of any game start with a critical number right in the middle. What defines winning? We have to teach people what game they're in. We better keep score because people behave differently when they keep score. And finally, what's in it for me? Why do all this learning and playing and accountability? Why do it if there's nothing in it for me? So if we really follow this path, let's make it where we can actually create a business of business people who think and act and feel more like the owners do. So if the company's the product, you now have your education program, your accountability, and your incentives all wound around creating a critical number. So there it is, education, accountability, and incentives, all focused around, we're going to teach that critical number, we're going to follow the action, and we're going to scoreboard around that critical number, we're going to forecast that number, and finally, we're going to reward around that number. So where do you begin? Well, what is your one thing? What defines winning? What is that thing that's in between you and being a great company in the coming year? For some of you, it's going to be, we need to make more profitability. I mean, frankly speaking, we just need to make more profit. Others, it's going to be, we are really not diversified. We really need to get more than one big customer, or we got too much riding on this one guy and his financials aren't looking so great. Could be a myriad of things. The idea is pretty simple though. In those early days of SRC, it was make that bank loan payment. And Jack could communicate that brilliantly, easily, because it was, hey guys, what happens if you don't make your truck payment? What was their answer? Bank takes the truck. What happens if you don't make your house payment? Bank takes the house, right? What happens if we don't make this bank loan payment? Bank takes the jobs. So the deal was, instead of fighting each other or having, interdepartmental conflict, it was about, we have a common goal, and it is, let's make sure we make that bank loan payment. So let's take it further. What does that look like? Well, if we have the critical number right at the center of our game, that's our team goal. And Jack says, okay, let's go to each of the departments, each one represented here by a yellow dot, right? Well, in departments, let's zoom out a little bit. Don't we kind of have, potentially, depending on the size of your business, you might have teams. You guys do this with Align software every single day, right? Is how do I make sure people are connecting to the core goals and movements of the business. Well, we've got to make that line of sight clear. So each department may have teams, and each team is populated with people. So what I'd like to do is get that one person way out on the fringes. And I know a lot of you have dispersed workforces right now. It's really exacerbating the issue of line of sight. How do I get that one person to say, this is how I help my team? Oh, and that's how the team helps the department, and that's how the department helps with a critical number of folks. That is line of sight. So now Jack, you see, he could go out into the factory and he could talk to someone. And the example I always use is I just picture some of my early jobs when I was a young guy going through college, working my way through. If you worked on a dock, wouldn't it be great if the boss came out and said, hey, I want to explain to you why it's so important that I'm asking you to stay a little bit late on Friday. Make sure that that last engine is strapped down, shrink wrapped, paperwork is perfect so we can bill for it, collect the money, and make the bank loan payment. You see how important that is, rather than, if you don't stay late, that sort of thing, the yelling, the screaming, the childish conversation versus the adult conversation. We could appeal to a higher level of thinking. And that's what's powerful. So let's walk through these real quickly and give you an idea of what it looks like to play the game. So to begin with, what I always like to do is start with the rules, because I'm telling you, man, when I was young, I'm number 4 out of 5 kids. And when we played Monopoly, I hated Monopoly. I still do. I have huge issues around Monopoly, just because that my older sisters always were the bank, right? And the bank was, you take the lid of the box and you put the money in it and then you dole it out, that sort of thing. Well, where are the rules in Monopoly? For those youngins out there, be patient with us baby boomers, will you? Because the rules of the box were literally, or the rules of the game were printed on the lid of the box inside. So if you couldn't see it, you couldn't understand the game. If you don't understand the game, there's no way you can win. So this is where we actually do the, people call us the open book management people, but it's a misnomer because it infers that opening the books will make some kind of an impact on people or their behavior. It won't. They probably won't understand it or won't care. Transparency without education is worthless. So why don't we teach people the stuff we know? Why don't we teach them what it's like to be a business person? And we can make that, it doesn't have to be gap financials. I'm talking about common sense financials that anyone can approach. People are running numbers in their own homes every single day. And I'd like to see them get a little bit better at it. We think if they're better at work, they're going to be better at home. When they're better at home, they're better in their community. So it's bringing the marketplace to our people. How hard is it to make money? How do we fit in, right? Where is my red dot in that big organization? And how do I move the numbers? We get to our critical numbers these days, since we've been doing it for almost 40 years, through a high involvement planning process. That's our strategic planning process. High involvement infers what? We involve as many people as we can. We absolutely teach everybody in all of our factories and businesses what is the big push for this year. How does that work? We train everyone. When you get started, you're just going to have to do it in a dynamic fashion where you do concentric circles, right? And you start with the design team, the leadership team, and work your way out. Just understanding that in the beginning, you can share some basic numbers with folks, and I'll give you tools and examples in this webinar that will help you get there. So bring the marketplace to your people, help them understand the financials, and help them understand that critical number, where you came up with it, how you got there, and what they need to do to connect to it. The best example I have right now is to tell you about in our own county. A number of years ago, they came to us. Of course, we've been here, as I said, since 1983, and they just now come to us, right, for help. Well, they did their projection, and they saw in 3 years they had no deferred revenue or tax money left waiting for them. People hadn't had raises in 6 years. Morale was terrible, and they were going, we need help. And so it's our community. We said, let's do it pro bono. Let's get in there. And we started to teach them, and they started to learn the numbers, and they started to understand that, shoot, they had people even voting against tax levies when we began. Employees of the county were voting against their own increases, right? Because they didn't understand it. They were never taught. They were just told, do the job, nothing more, nothing less. Well, as we began to teach them, and they're huddling in the rotunda of the county courthouse, it's just so awesome. We started to hear stories. And my favorite story is a janitor came up to the county commissioner and said, Dr. Bench, I want to tell you my impact on the county. And he said, well, tell me all about it. He says, well, I've been here over 20 years. And for the first time in 20 years, I read the instructions on my drum of chemicals. It says dilute 7 to 1. His first year, he saved the county $7,000. Now multiply that by hundreds and hundreds of other county employees, and they've completely turned it around. People, their first year in, they saw a huge impact. They started to be able to give salary increases to their employees, better benefits, all because they started to understand how money worked in the county. It's really great to know that it is possible to make government better. The second one here is follow the action and keep score. This is where you bring accountability to life. We're scoreboarding everything. We're huddling around the numbers every week, and we're forward forecasting our numbers. This is a big difference, right? Forward forecasting, because we're really saying not what happened last week or where are we today. It's how do we think the month will end? So I'd love to tell you that, you know, what you really need to do is watch a quick video. Just check this out. We have a lot of them on our YouTube channel, but I just want you to see the elements of a good huddle. So it's an older video, and it's our first joint venture with John Deere, 50-50. This is where we taught them the reman process. So because it's older, it's going to be a little bit grainy, and I want to warn you, you will see a mullet.
Sales.
We're going to leave the number at 2 million, but there is some upside potential of that.
We are ahead 60%. How'd you know that? We are ahead 60%. Now, if that's not a hoot and holler for Mike Stivers, I don't know what is. Okay, what's the absorption number?
260.
So that's a better or worse than last week?
It's 5 better than last week, and we got a shot at another 5.
I think that deserves a round of applause. Look at these profit numbers. We got $784,000 profit that we've made before bonus. Total factory sales.
2116.
Thank you. What's the total variance number, Tim?
It is 58.
All right, good job. I need manufacturing overhead spending number for production.
182.
Okay, standard COGS.
1576.
It's huge. There's a big honking number out there. Paul, how much have we spent on warranty so far this year?
Okay, we paid out GL $228,000 in warranty.
Okay, so $228,000 in warranty. You walk out of here tonight, that's your thing to think about is how can we reduce that cost? Okay, and here's the number that I've just been waiting for all week. Freight variances, inbound freight.
3 unfavorable.
And outbound freight?
10 favorable.
So we're holding this 10 favorable here for another week. Is that gonna hold up?
Depends on what sales do.
You want to do a
But
little
yeah,
tweak?
it's going to hold up. It's going to hold up for the numbers that are on the board, but if they change, I'll change those.
And they'll get better, right?
Absolutely. Whatever you say, sir.
Wait. Here's your shirt. You got to hand this shirt out to this person, too. I mean, this is pretty cool. So the bonus for the month accrual is how much?
91,000.
So how much we got in the bonus pool?
91,000.
Oh, is this like a hoot and holler? Yes, this is a hoot and holler. Okay, we're done.
Okay, so I know that in this webinar format, it's not like we can have this open conversation, but I know that if I were to ask the question of you, what did you see? You guys would say things like engagement, energy, and of course they knew there was a film crew in the room. But I'm telling you, when there's ownership, right? It goes. Right? People are like, let's go, and all their numbers were in the future. How will the month end? And if I asked you the question of what was the one big thing that we're all supposed to be thinking about, even if that was your first day at Regen Technologies, you would have picked up it was warranty cost. And then the question you should be asking of your supervisor is, how do I affect that number? And every department can have some kind of a touch to that warranty number. But I'm going to test it. If you guys would type this into into the chat, how much was in the bonus pool? Eric, I love it. You got it. 91. Tim, Mike, John. Yes, I love it. This is so great. You all got that, didn't you? Eric, you also said, I like how each leader had their numbers ready, right? The people generating the numbers in the business were generating the forecast. So really the huddle is simply about bringing your forecast in. And you saw the freight guy, right? He says, well, based on the numbers that I see here, this is what it's going to be. The thing is, imagine going into your staff meeting or operations meeting, whatever you want to call it. And instead of letting it sprawl out into this huge thing, you said, we're just going to hit the numbers. In 30 minutes, we're going to hit the numbers. Just bring me your forecast. And don't you think they get better and better and better? I'm going to give you a little extra kind of bonus takeaway here. Here's what's going to happen when you ask people, say, I'd really like to do this great game of business stuff, or maybe you just want to get better at forecasting your numbers. You can say, I'd like you to each bring your forecast in and how you think the month will end. Knowing that when you get really good at it, you'll ask your people, tell me 3 months out, tell me how the quarter will end, right? But just for now, just how will the month end? What do you think? And people will say, dude, what am I, a fortune teller? You say, your job is not to predict the future. Your job is to implement it. I'm sorry, to influence it. I really screwed that up good, didn't I? Your job is to influence it, to create it. This is their future. And when you add all the futures up, you go, whoa, this is good, or, oh, we need to work on it. But now it's in the future. We can still work on it. So you can imagine that the accountability, man, you got to come in with your forecast every week, and you got to have meetings beforehand, right? You got to talk to people, have conversations, actually talk about issues in the business. But hey, isn't it great to have some control? And that's where we get back into the principles, right? So we have been teaching people the business. We have been now forecasting the numbers, and the big question is going to be, well, what in the heck is in it for me? And so that's the next one, right? Staking the outcome. Now, it's more than what you might think. For some companies, yeah, the long-term thing is going to be ownership. Only about 6,500 companies in the US share broad-based employee ownership. That's not what I'm here about. But you're staking the outcome. What is it? Is part of their staking the outcome their benefits? Yep. Is it perhaps mini games like we're going to talk about here in a second? Is it the bonus plan that you have? Sure, all those things are staking the outcome. What I'd like to do is have you reflect on it, though, especially as you're planning for the coming year, and maybe even rounding out this year. Is it really motivating people? Is it really incentivizing and connecting them to the critical number? Because if it isn't, let's think about changing it. This is the time to think about it, because I want you to go back in your memory banks here just a little bit. And I want you to think about more than just the bonus plan. I want you to think about what can they see right now, right? That's going to be your benefits, sign-on bonus, spot bonus, anything like that, like right now. And maybe even mini games, maybe out a quarter, right? So they're a little bit further out. But then the annual bonus program, whether it's paid out quarterly or whatever, that would be sort of midterm. Long-term would be whatever you're offering them, maybe a career path, maybe an opportunity to run one of your locations or move up in the business. The thing is, are you aligning those well? Are they really aligned around building a great company? So here's the perfect example of any bonus plan gone wrong. If you don't watch this right now in your family, every year at Christmas, at least start sometime. I mean, it is a classic, but there's reasons for it because there's truth in it, right? And what I will tell you is that this example, if I asked you, what was Clark really trying to do in this movie? A lot of you are going to say, well, it was about his bonus. It was about jelly of the month, right? And all that stuff. Go deeper. And I really want you to understand this because it's huge. Clark was digging a hole for a pool he could not afford based on a bonus he wasn't even sure he was going to get. How many Clark W. Griswolds do you have working in your organization right now? Are you making it so crystal clear about how their bonus program fits into the bigger picture? And Aaron, I know you asked this question. What I'd like to do is I'm going to touch on it real quick. Your question was, how do I simplify the profit sharing bonus plan formula to make it easier to explain? You know, if they don't understand it, it's not motivating. If they can't calculate it, not working. It's not incentivizing. So what we do is we actually have an annual bonus program based on our critical number. We pay it out quarterly, and we do it in such a fashion where we pay a progressive amount, because the idea is protect the company first, right? Make sure that we have those jobs there. And so when we look at the bonus plan design, these are the three functions that I want you to think about: team-based, self-funding, gain share. So let's start with gain share. What does that mean? If profit sharing starts at zero, it infers that if we make $1, we share $1. That is not going to make you a sustainable business. But what if we actually build a threshold or minimum performance that would allow us to do our different investments that we need maybe it's capital expenditures, maybe it's taxes, maybe it's the owner's draw, all that mixed in together, but some sort of minimum performance that says this keeps the business operating for a long period of time. We're strong. And then above that is the gain. And I'll share 50-50. 50 goes to the company, 50% goes to the bonus pool. And I'm telling you, if we hadn't been working it for 40 years, I'd tell you a different way to do it. It works for us. It works for companies in every industry around the world. The only place it doesn't work, guess what, is places like Greene County, Missouri, because it's unconstitutional for a government employee to receive a bonus. Now, as a taxpayer, I'm happy about that, but everybody else, you're okay. So think gain share. Self-funding means don't ever pay a bonus out of debt. Make sure you only pay out rewards that have been earned. And then finally, team-based. We're much more likely to hit a goal if we go together. So those are the big three that I would tell you. And I would tell you this, Aaron, let's have a conversation. At the end of the presentation, I'm going to give you access to the audiobook of the original Great Game of Business book, plus a chapter on mini games, which would take you from now to the end of the year and also set you up for next year. It's our short-term incentive plans that are just, you could try it out in a department, see if it works. I'm going to give you all of that stuff, and then you can also contact us if it would help. But to answer your question, the way to simplify any bonus plan, to make it where you can teach around it and connect people to it, is basically, when we've designed a bonus program, we put out we're putting out a plan or a budget for the year, and we're saying, here it is, and let's just pretend that it's based on profitability in your example. If we have a profitability plan, we can actually build a spreadsheet or a map. I call it a bonus map, where you can look quarter by quarter. Are we hitting our year-to-date numbers? And if so, what level? We like to do a percent per level. Are we at? So in other words, if we're exceeding our bonus grade and we're at 10%, that means 10% of everyone's salary would be paid out in bonus. Now, we pay 10% the first quarter, 20% of the available pool the second quarter, 30 the third, 40 the fourth. Again, this is all covered in Get in the Game, our how-to of the original Great Game of Business book. But I'm trying to give you the broad strokes, right? The idea is that map never changes. So you can see, as soon as you get up out of the huddle, if you forecasted the quarter out as a team, you can say we're forecasting 500,000 by the end of the third quarter. You can see we're at a level 6 bonus or whatever it is. Because it doesn't change, people trust it and they can believe it. Right underneath is the formula. Then they can calculate, what is 6% of my salary and what quarter are we in? So what's my potential check, if you will? What I love about it is you keep talking about it every week. You're forecasting your bonuses, right? It's not on you, the owner of the business. It's not on you, the manager of the business. It's not you, a supervisor. It's on us. And that is a powerful place to be, ladies and gentlemen. So hopefully so far, this has been useful for you. I think one other thing that you need to know is this. One thing that people miss when they put together any kind of bonus program, even an incentive program for short term, they forget. They go, hey, great job. Okay, let's get back to work. We don't celebrate enough. And that's one of the things about the Great Game of Business, is it really can be powerful. So what I'd like to do is this. I know we're coming down to Q&A time here. I'd like to show you an example of how powerful this can be. So I have been lucky enough to work with some very cool companies. And one of the companies that I really have enjoyed working with is Kirby Lane Cafe down in Austin, Texas. And I think rather than me go overboard on, kind of my description of what was happening down there as we were implementing, I'd like to show you a little video of Jason. And Jason, well, you know what? He'll tell you the story. Check this out.
My name is Jason. I've been working for Kirby Lane for 5 years. I am at Expo for the evening shift. I ended up picking the dessert line because I am directly there at all times, and I can kind of oversee it the easiest during my shift. You know, when I took that over and I started implementing a couple changes here and there, I mean, bare minimum, I probably have saved at least $100 a week. But you multiply that by the 4 weeks in a month, and that's $400. And then you go by a year, and that's $4,800. And then we have 7 stores, and that's a lot of money. And that's just one line that is very small in the big scheme of things. So the recommendations I would have for somebody just starting a line would be, don't be afraid. Think outside of the box. You know, make changes. It's not always going to work out, but the only way to really learn is by making mistakes. You know, I think the great game of business is good because it helps people to really kind of understand just the business that they're in and what's going on. It helps to give them a little more respect for the people that they work with and the company they work for. And I think that getting involved in this can do nothing but help you in every avenue that you try to go down in the future, whether it's owning your own business or, you know, working for another company.
I just love that. I mean, you can tell he owns it, man. And the other thing is that I would take Jason and people like Matt Jackson and different, like people who took ownership of these different line items on the income statement. You saw them doing that, right? I mean, if we zoom in a little bit, you can see where they're actually having their huddle in the restaurant. They just close curtains over the financials, which is powerful, I think. But look, 4th line from the bottom, dessert cost Jason. I just think that's so cool. He took ownership and then he realized some things were happening. They didn't even have a standard. So this is where our mantra comes in. People support what they help create, right? He's much more likely to go after a line on the income statement if he believes that he's the one that influences the line. So here's where he started. He realized that cakes and pies and things like that, different desserts, there was no standard. It was just chop a piece off, boom, boom, boom. Look at the piece on the left. Not only is it ugly, and you remember presentation's everything, right? But it was also 30% bigger than the one on the right. Jason is the guy who taught me for the first time in my life, there are 8 slices in a pie. Just by doing so, he could get a handle on what was happening in the business. So if I would have said, you need to get 8 slices out of that, you know, he would have been like, dude, you are the one square dude, you know, I'm not nearly as cool as these kids working in the business. So he used the template. And this is one of the things that is, you know, at the end, I'm going to share that link with you so you can get the audio book and the chapter around mini games. And this is the mini game template. And basically speaking, here it is. I'll show it again at the end. You've got an objective, an improvement goal, a benefit. I mean, all the things that you can imagine. You probably do this naturally anyway. Here's what his looked like. He said he had to learn a term, shrink, right? What is shrinkage in a restaurant, specifically around desserts? Well, he learned that they were yielding about 75% of desserts. Where was the other 25% going? He had to find out, and he had to ask people and talk to people and figure out a process, one of which was, hey, let's put a more significant set of constraints around this thing. Let's make sure we set standards, or what they call PARs. He got people involved. He had to get the back of house involved to find out how far they could chill a pie so that they could slice it perfectly without destroying the texture and the taste of the pie. Isn't that cool? And what kind of rewards do they want? Just stuff like t-shirts and dessert themselves. And at 90 days, they wanted to, you know, a pie or cake of their choice to take home to their family and friends. The bottom line is they were reinforcing this business over 30, 60, 90 days. And at 10-cent profitability, what they were learning is every dollar they saved on the dessert line was worth 10 in sales because they had 10-cent profitability. So they were learning all about how that one line item made a big difference. What's powerful is it gave Jason line of sight, but it also gave other people line of sight. So here's what he said in the video: $100 a week, there's 12 months in the year, 7 stores, 33 grand. That's not right, right? Everyone can learn. And as he said in the video, we learn by making mistakes. The reality is there's 52 weeks, right? So it's $100 a week times 52 weeks times 7 stores is 36 grand in savings, right? That he created through that new behavior and process that he created. But at 10-cent profitability, they would have had to sell $364,000 of pancakes to offset the money that he saved on the. Here's the deal: it isn't just pies and cakes. They did it on soft drinks, paper goods, 55 gallons of salsa a week, homemade. They saved just by asking a different question. flatware, smallwares, net promoter score for customer satisfaction, $1,000 a week in bacon. What I'm asking is if they can come up with $2.3 million of impact in their first year, can your people do it? I think they can. So what I'd like to do is encourage you to think about, what if you didn't just get one person involved? What if you started to involve the teams, the departments, and pretty soon you get the whole organization thinking differently, thinking and acting and feeling more like business people, because it's really easy to stop one guy. It's pretty hard to stop 100. And guys, just start somewhere. Voltaire said the perfect is the enemy of the good. I would say, paraphrase it. The perfect is the enemy of the implemented. Do something and start soon. So here it is, greatgame.com/Steve. There's the QR code. And I understand that the team will be sending out that link for you as well. So I'll back out of here and we'll go to questions.
Steve, thank you for a fabulous presentation. We do have some questions, so I'll just read them to you. There was a question posed. Most of the examples that you've given us are regarding line item financials being owned by the team for physical products. Can you give some examples with services instead of products or goods?
Yeah, great question. I love it. And the reason I love it is because I have a good answer. The answer is, okay, tell me what's keeping you up at night. That's probably a line item. And if you don't have one, rework, because I'm telling you, everybody has it. You call it something different perhaps, but let's just say that it's a call, like that group in Houston I told you about, a lot of those folks were in the service business, carpet cleaning, remodeling, construction, somewhere in technology, somewhere in healthcare. The thing is, whatever you call it, callbacks, go backs, rework, it has the value of 4 to 7 times the original work, right? So you have the time it took you to do it, the time to take it to redo it, the opportunity cost for something else you could have been doing to generate profitability. And then of course you've got, what damage did I do to my brand? How does this affect customer service and relationships? How does it affect referrals? The powerful part is that, yes, we do have a lot of examples around physical products, but in reality, you've got that too. You just have to connect people to the stuff that they do matters. If they're writing code and it's got a bug and we could have slowed down, measure twice, cut once, whatever you want to call it. If we can make them see how they make an impact, they're much happier. They're proud of their craft if we give them a chance. I love it when we talk to service companies, because they often go, well, I guess it isn't a widget, but it's sort of a widget. It's a billable hour, right? It's a way that we make money. And so we got to get away from this thought of, well, Jack Stack's an engine guy. What does he know about my high-tech business? What he understands is business. So I hope that helps a little bit, Eugene.
It certainly does. Steve, what about how transparent on financials do you suggest that we get for non-managers?
Great question. In fact, I don't get that one very often, but I can tell you this, as comfortable as you are. So we start out with very basic financials, very basic, like the line items that matter to people. What do they influence every single day? So all numbers are represented. They're not all detailed. It's not a gap financial that we're looking at. What I want to talk about is common sense financials. So tell me the buckets of revenue that you have. Tell me the buckets of costs of goods that you have. Show me the margin. Then let's talk about expenses. We do not share salary information. Now, I'm telling you, at SRC, sharing salary information is grounds for termination. All of them are represented, salaries and benefits, but at other companies, we've seen people mostly just consolidate it down to SG&A or salaries or direct labor up here, admin salaries down here. That's about as good as you need to go. It's about, what are you trying to teach, Eugene? It's about, what are you trying to teach? So don't try to hide information from them. Unless you've got a boat on the balance sheet, you shouldn't have a problem.
Absolutely. I mean, we have this, I think you and I have spoken about, where I have a conversation with CEOs and ask them, does every employee know what your revenue goal is for the quarter? And that's the type of information that every employee should know, because everybody has been hired and is part of the team to help the organization hit that target. So everybody should know where the finish line is. Tim asked the question, is this really doable for a small business, for example, with 2 people?
It is. Here's the thing. Honestly, where I would start with 2 people, because I have gotten that question a lot lately, because we're connecting with more and more very small businesses and startups. because of COVID, right? All of the virtual stuff has given people access to what used to be done in workshops and coaching. So the answer is this: do you feel like your business is going to scale? And if you're on the Align webcast here, I assume that you're building it to scale. So what I'm saying is, if you start good habits now, guess what? It becomes part of your culture. So yes, you can do it. It's probably not quite as exciting because you already kind of know the answers. There's only two of you. You're talking all the time anyway. But wait till you start getting a few more people involved, and then you don't know everybody's name, and then that sort of thing. It's like, how do we keep our arms around this? It's communication and data. And wow, what if we could communicate about the data that makes the business successful?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the purpose of the Align software, is we're trying to build scoreboards and huddles where everybody can have accountability and transparency of the critical numbers and all the things that we're trying to achieve that are going to help the business grow and scale. One more question that was posed: do you have examples of critical numbers when you are at a net loss? Currently, there isn't a net income right now to share in a bonus pool. Sounds great, but we aren't there yet. So how do we incentivize when there isn't really a bonus pool at the end of the year or the end of the quarter or the end of the month to give out?
So I'm hearing two questions in there. What do you do with a net loss? What's the critical number, and how do you incentivize? Well, honestly, at this point, it sounds like the critical number is screaming at you. How do we get this to a positive number? And so the incentive really, I mean, I don't want to be crass, but I'm saying, the incentive right now is we get to keep working here. But you can also put in mini games, as those folks did, to operationally to incentivize people. Maybe it's not cash. In fact, most mini games last year, because I tallied it myself with our all-star case studies, the average mini game produced $18,500 in profitability that they didn't have in 90 days. Would that help you? Well, what were the rewards? None of them were cash. All of them were rewards that people picked. And when you start to show people numbers and you go, I don't know what to do, we're at a loss, you think they're going to run for the hills, chances are the people you really want to stay will say, I had no idea, what can I do to help? Well, we need to watch expenses. We need to cut. We need to do this. We need to do that. We need more sales. I'm telling you, people are better than you think they are. I wish you good luck. And by the way, the critical number is what's keeping you up at night. I guarantee it.
All right, we are just a minute past the hour. Steve, thank you very much for the time. If anybody has any final questions, please feel free to pose them now. I'll give everybody just a minute or two. If there's any other questions that you want to pop into the chat, please do so. Steve, I'll ask you one last quick question. Does the critical number change quarter over quarter?
Changes every year, Eugene. What we try to do is say, for 1 year, we're going to teach one thing. I would suggest that quarter over quarter, what you do is look for drivers to the critical number, and those change, right? Because as we get better and better at things, like Kirby Lane was looking for ways that they could move the profitability critical number. So they looked at paper goods and, right, they were looking at line items specifically. That would be my suggestion. The idea is simple: is if you kind of nail a critical number over the period of a year, 52 weekly huddles teaching about it, let's say debt to equity, they kind of learned it. So what's next? In an SRC's example, the second year critical number was, wow, we have one customer. That is not smart. Let's diversify. And so it was, how do we get other customers and other product lines?
Fantastic.
Yeah.
All right, seeing no further questions, I want to thank everybody for joining us today. A big thank you to Steve for a great presentation. Obviously, you can learn more about the Great Game of Business by visiting their website at greatgame.com. As always, we encourage you to use the Align family of software to implement some of these great business habits, set some critical numbers or a critical number that you're measuring and tracking, set some weekly huddles where you're constantly looking at this number and how can you improve it. If you need more information, please don't hesitate to contact us at support@aligntoday.com. Thanks again, and we hope that you will join us for our next coach webinar. Till then, we hope that you have a great day, and thanks again, Steve.
Thank you, Eugene. Appreciate it.
Take care, everybody.